All right. Okay, good morning, everyone. And welcome to Center for Spiritual Living Boulder Valley Zoom service. I'm Catherine Snyder. As I said, we're Center for Spiritual Living Boulder Valley, which is in Lafayette, Colorado. And we're an organization that teaches that each of us is a divine being, that what we think and say matters, and that you can change your life by changing what you think. Our vision and our passion is inspiring and uplifting every one of us to transform the world. Transform the world. Got to think big through love, dedication to spirit. Anyway, we start each of these talks with a type of prayer that we call affirmative prayer. And this type of prayer is not about beseeching an outside God. Each one of us has our own manifestation of that divine energy. And this prayer is about inviting that forward, declaring the truth of who we are and what this day will be. And I guess I will do the prayer today because Jim is out. So take a moment to sink into your heart space and bring your awareness to just this beautiful day that was created, was inspired by what? Not the outside God, but by the field, the oneness that infuses everything. And into this space of oneness that always says yes, we put our words, and my words are that these words of Rev Dan touch our hearts, that we unite in celebration and in joy, and that the divine spirit within each of us comes forward, and that we feel it and know that we are immensely loved. And these words I release into that field, into that oneness that always says yes. And so it is. Thank you. Our speaker today is Reverend Dan Granda. He is co-founder and co-director of the Soul Evolution Collaborative, a Centers for Spiritual Living teaching center, that is dedicated to fostering both personal transformation and communal evolution through an innovative bricks and clicks model. Rev Dan is a graduate of the Holmes Institute and the School for Spiritual Leadership. He's a licensed minister with the Centers for Spiritual Living. All right, Rev Dan, take it away.
Yeah, good morning. It's good to be back here with you all. So I'm excited about today. We've kind of touched on the topic we're going to be talking about in a little conversation before we started. And so I think we'll just jump right into it. The other week I was recording a episode of a podcast, and the topic was trusting the process, which is a phrase that the circle that I'm a part of, we kind of throw around often. And at some point, I don't know if this was a joke that one of us made up or if this was something kind of floating around the internet or wherever it came from, but somebody asked jokingly, they said, "Do you think the process knows how many people are trusting it?" like if I were the process, I'd want to know that all of these people are trusting in the process so much. And it was funny, and then it kind of sunk in, like, well, yeah, wait a minute. Like what actually is the process? What are we trusting in? And I think this phrase gets used a lot, and it gets used in a lot of different contexts, and so it got us to really thinking about it. And so we put together this whole podcast episode on trusting the process and what it means and how it shows up. And I thought, what a great topic to share with you all here, because what we realized is just about everybody we know is having like all kinds of life events going on right now. It just seems like everybody, like, it was kind of something would happen, and then there would be a pause, and maybe something else would happen later. And, life is life. Like, that happens, right? We don't really control when life shows up that way, where things happen. And yet it seems like more recently, those events have been happening more frequently, maybe right on top of each other, life event, life event, life event, life event. And we're hearing this trust the process more and more. And so it's a really interesting idea because, if you're in the middle of let's say a workshop and somebody is asking you to trust the process, like we're bumping up against a challenging emotion or a challenging experience or something that's going on in life that we're trying to kind of workshop our way through. And maybe the facilitator asks you to trust the process, trusting the process of the workshop or trusting the process of expressing that experience out loud in the group. Like there's kind of an unspoken understanding of what the process is in that scenario, that it's like trust that this is going to lead us somewhere, that we're going to kind of come out the other side of this. And yet outside of that kind of scenario, outside of the workshop, I think the process is maybe a little more ambiguous. And yet that's kind of where I'm hearing it used more and more. It's like, oh, just trust the process. Like trust whatever that is, that this is going to work out. And I think that there is a sense of ease that comes with that idea. Like, oh, right, yeah, there's something else working that I can trust. This is going to work out. It's going to be fine. Um, and what really is that? What is that thing that we're kind of placing that trust in? And so prior to starting this service today, we kind of had this brief conversation about the idea of an outside God. Um, are we placing our trust in something outside of ourselves, saying it's got it figured out? There's something besides me that's going on here. There's something outside of us that's kind of calling the shots, that's deciding what's going to happen or not. Or is the process not outside of me, but something larger than me that I'm a part of, that is always creating more of itself? It's not destructive, right? The thing that we are a part of, the life that we are a part of, the universe that we live in is not destructive, it's creative. And so it's not destroying itself, it's creating more of itself. It's creating more expression of itself. And that certainly can be something we can place our trust in. And I think there's an and here, that it's easy enough to maybe misuse or misplace our trust when we say things like trust the process. Because I think because of the society that we live in, and historically in the United States, there is a very Puritan, kind of evangelical Christian background that a lot of our societal beliefs come out of. And there is a belief of good and evil in a lot of society. And so there's got to be something good out there that is working, making decisions, that is figuring this out. And I think it's really easy to want there to be at times something else out there. Like, don't ask me to, I don't want to take responsibility for this. Like, please just let there be something else that's got this under control, that is not me. that is saying, yeah, this is going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Just do this. And maybe that is part of the human relationship with that thing that is greater than us. Maybe that part of that relationship means we have moments when we are relying on something that feels like it's outside of ourselves and yet is not actually. And so in the trusting the process mentality, I think there is a spectrum of experiences, right? We have this trust the process kind of within a defined context. We have the trust the process when we are understanding that we are part of the process. And then I think there's also trusting the process beyond that, where it can start to dabble into the land of bypass. And I think we'll talk about that in a second. But I think to further define the process, one of the stories I got into in the podcast was before my career as a minister, I was and I guess still am, a professional musician. And so that meant, going and kind of doing the gig life and kind of playing shows and things all over the place. It also meant teaching. And so I have taught music privately and at the high school level in large groups for almost 25 years. That's hard to believe. So a lot of that is teaching marching band in the fall. So I do adjunct music work at one of the local high schools. And so from June through like part of November, we are regularly meeting rehearsals several times a week. And it can be an intense process. And it's fascinating to me. I get to show up and bring New Thought principle and introduce it into like hundreds of people's lives without really making it any sort of formal thing. Like I'm not pushing principle on them, but I'm introducing them to the idea of, we can create this together. You have influence over your life, over your experience. And so it's fascinating to watch freshmen come in their first year who have never done anything like this, who have never had to think to the level that we're asking them to think, to activate on their own thinking process, because in a marching band you really are your own individual as much as you are a part of the whole group. And so if you're not standing in the right place, if you're not moving the right way, if you're not in the form with everybody else from the stands as somebody watching, it's really noticeable. And so it's this amazing analogy of life from a New Thought perspective, that you are a very important individual, but not any more important or less important than the whole that you are a part of. And so we are all creating together this whole thing. And so there's so much importance on you as an individual, how you do your work to show up to be part of the work that we get to do together. And so for many people, like, this is the first time that anything like that has really shown up in their life in any sort of like tangible way. And so I love talking with the kids as we're learning, as they're kind of entering this new phase of their music life. And inevitably there is this moment of doubt where they realize we're asking them to do something that feels so far beyond anything they've ever done. And essentially what I get to do is say, trust in this process that we will get you to where you need to be. Trust that we've done this long enough to know that we're not asking of you anything that you're not capable of. Trust in this process, trust in the experience that we've built and the process that we're creating, that by the end of this season, you will be you will have far surpassed any expectation of yourself or any expectation that we've had, that we will definitely get to a place where you are able to do this without even thinking about it. It will become such second nature. And so it's fascinating to me to realize, like, I have been working at this, not only teaching marching band, but working at teaching this philosophy far beyond even just my experience as a minister, as a speaker, as a teacher. But that we've actually been doing this. The groups that I've been a part of have actually been realizing, bringing into like tangible physical reality the principles of science of mind as these groups. And it's like, oh wow, not only do I get to witness these kids kind of go through this process, but also recognize the growth that I've had in that, but then get to kind of full circle bring that back here as an example of like, wow, trusting the process really works, especially when you know what the process is. Especially when you know that there is a process to lean into, that there is a process that exists. When we know, I guess, within the container that is the marching band world, the process is the rehearsal schedule, the way we've broken down. We're going to spend this much time on the fundamentals of technique, and then we're going to start introducing slowly the music, and then we have these sessions over here to learn how you move around on the field, and then we have these other sessions where you start putting all that together. And I thought, how brilliant that is a metaphor for what we do within this teaching, for how we, like, it's one thing to say trust the process. It's something totally different to realize that the process is an actual thing, right? That it's not just some outside God, outside figure that we're saying, well, I don't know, something else is making the decisions and it'll be fine. I believe in good and it'll be great. Because the reality of it is, like, we don't really control life. We don't really control the way life shows up. And I think that that is the, um, I guess the bypass trap of trusting the process. That it's easy to expect life to show up, I'll say, quote, perfectly, right? That as a philosophy, I think it's easy to say that life should be a certain way. Life should be showing up a certain way. And if it's not, well, then, what's in your consciousness kind of thing, which is dangerous. Honestly, that's a very dangerous mentality. And it's really easy to kind of slip into that thought process. I think it's easy to be hard on ourselves. It's easy to take that and be hard on others, that when things aren't showing up the way we think they should be or really want them to, it's easy to kind of slip into that what's in your consciousness kind of mentality, where, oh, I must have done something wrong, or I'm not doing it right, or I'm not saying the right thing, or doing the right thing, or having the right thoughts, or whatever it might be. Whereas if we take the marching band example, no one is purposely mismarching the show. They may be making mistakes, or have forgotten, or need a reminder, or kind of just checked out for a certain, period of time. But we have guideposts, we have places to get to, ways to get back in. And I think if we take that approach, then all of a sudden it kind of flips that around, that the bypass of, oh, there's something else out there, would be like, I don't have to actually think about marching the show, it's just going to do itself. Like, never would that ever work. There's always such a focus when we're learning how to do the thing. Yes, you do get to a point where, when you know it well enough, you don't have to think about all the individual pieces, but you certainly have to have your checkpoints along the way. And so I think that with the bypass trap, the checkpoints become trying to control the way life shows up. And so we have this idea of like, ooh, I can create my experience, which means I can have it be exactly what I want it to be, which actually stems from that same place of, oh, there's a God out there that's making decisions. I am separate from the experience, and so I get to create my experience separate from anything else that's going on. Right? That's the trap, is that there is that creation somehow equals control. And we don't actually control the way life shows up, because we're not actually alone in this. We're not actually separate in it. And so life itself, which we are a part of, the process itself, which we are a part of, is always creating, always co-creating, that we're always creating along with. So instead of control, we have influence over, but life is going to kind of keep happening, right? And I equate this to, if you remember back, I think it was really big in the 90s, this idea of save the planet. And I think it's still big now, but it's really started coming up in the 90s. There were commercials and things about it. Really, we have to save the planet. And I remember thinking, like, yeah, we really do. Like, we need to get it together and save the planet. And at some point along the way, realize, like, no, the planet's going to be fine. The planet has done this over and over and over again for millions, billions of years. It's actually us that we would need to save. So it's our relationship to the planet that would need to be saved. If there's anything to save, it would be our relationship to the planet. It's how we're treating the planet, how we're using the planet, how we're existing here on the planet. And that we have influence over. We don't have any influence over how the planet reacts to life being life, or how we are existing on the planet. We don't have any control over the hurricanes, the tornadoes, the earthquakes, the blizzards, the whatever, other than the influence that we have on things that are affecting climate, that are affecting temperatures, that are right. So yeah, we have absolute real impact on global warming, and we don't control life events. We don't control death. We don't control sickness. We don't, I mean, all of the things, right? We don't actually have control over those things. And yet we have influence on how we respond, on how we create what is happening, how we're co-creating what is happening. And so just as much as we don't need to save the planet, we do need to save our own experience. And I think that just shows up in so many different ways, except that when we think it doesn't, right? So the same thing with the, oh, there's something out there kind of God, or the creating with my blinders on like I'm in a vacuum. That kind of bypass trap actually stems from a lack of knowing where to place our trust. So I won't say that it's a lack of trust, because I think we're always trusting in something. It's just a matter of where we are putting that trust. And I think in the outside of ourselves version of God, we're placing our trust in the desire for there to be something outside and separate from ourselves that we would like to have in control. Right? It's a trust in the desire for control, a trust in the desire for life to show up in a way that seems perfect, that seems the way it should be showing up. And instead, I think well, what that does is it keeps us kind of shying away from discomfort. It keeps us shying away from what we don't like, what we don't want, right? If we're always believing that life should show up in the way that we want and always thinking it should be perfect, then it's kind of like a smack in the face when something unlike that shows up. When in reality, we know that life is going to keep showing up as life. And when we recognize we're part of that and not separate from that, then we can start placing our trust in the fact that, this is a process, that life continues evolving. And so this thing that showed up may not be enjoyable. It may not be what I wanted. It may not even be what I thought was going to happen, but it's only for now. That it's only for now. It's not an infinite experience. This is not permanent, because life is always changing. And certainly that can be uncomfortable at times, and certainly not desirable. And yet if we're in that controlling mindset, then there is an avoidance of discomfort, an avoidance of wanting to look at the fact that life is showing up in a way that we didn't like. Whereas if we recognize that life is going to keep showing up in different ways, and we recognize that life keeps evolving, then there's actually a space that opens up for us to kind of be in that momentary discomfort. Because the only way to acknowledge discomfort and get to the other side of it is going through it, right? We can't really go around discomfort. We can't really avoid the discomfort, because it will keep showing up in other ways, right? So to build I'll say an active trust, right? So rather than a trust in a mistrust in the idea of control or separation, really, we can have an active trust in that realization that we are the process, right? All of a sudden, if we realize we are the process, we can realize that certainly we can't control how life shows up, but we can kind of buffer when it shows up, right? That it doesn't alter our whole experience or our whole identity, right? That if we are the process, that we're not really bystanders in life showing up. It's not showing up at us or to us. We are kind of in the flow of how that's going. And that does require moments of being able to sit in the discomfort. So it does require that ability to do that, right? But this not only builds a trust in the process itself, but I think it actually stems from a development of self-trust. How do I respond? Can I trust myself to respond when life shows up as life, right? Those things that, whatever the moment, the things that we didn't desire to happen. If we're not actively resisting that, because we can trust ourselves to know that we can handle it, that we know that we can respond in a way that will get us through this. If we can trust in the fact that we are okay sitting in that distrust, sitting in that discomfort, then all of a sudden, all of the responses shift. How we react to life showing up as the lifey things really changes. It really changes. And so I think if we shift from an outside thing to realizing that we are a part of the process, that we in fact are the process, and then continue going to shift towards trusting that we can be okay, even if it's not showing up the way we wanted it to. Be okay recognizing that it's momentary. Being okay recognizing that we have the ability to respond and even influence what shows up next. We get to kind of have this reframing, this re-experiencing of what life really is. And I go back to this marching band thing where we have kids we're kind of in the middle of our season right now, right? And so we started in June, and there were there's a large group of freshmen this year who um it creates an interesting balance in the band when you have almost as many freshmen as you do upperclassmen, because there's less role models for them to look up to. Typically, if the upperclassmen far outnumber the incoming freshmen, then there is this balance where the kids kind of have somebody to the left, somebody to the right that they can look up to. What we're finding this year is that there's more doubt, because you have 2 or 3 freshmen in a row in line before there's another upperclassman. And so it's been an interesting experience to try and convince them that it's like, you may not feel like you can do this right now, but trust in me that I know you can do this right now. And even since rehearsals, through summer rehearsals, we're now into the school year, even in that last month period, it's been fascinating to see the growth in trusting the process. I'm part of something that's bigger than me, that I am equally a part of. It's not that the marching band is happening, that I'm just showing up. I am equally a part of this thing. And so trusting in the fundamentals, trusting in the technique, trusting in the rehearsal process, trusting in how we learn where those check marks are, where those milestones are, trusting in this showing up. They've now gone out and done the show at a halftime at a football game, in front of people for like the first time. And they came back like, whoa, like what a different experience being able to perform this in front of people. And I think that's kind of the same thing that we get to go through in life, trusting the process, right? Trusting the fundamentals of, oh, I'm part of something. It's not separate from me. I can place my trust in the fact that life is going to be life. I can place my trust in me, knowing that I have the tools to be here, to do this, to influence my experience, to be part of this thing, to know that, you really are the process, that you have what you need to do it, and that it's okay, right? I think that's one of my biggest lessons, is that it is okay to be in that moment that doesn't feel okay. So hopefully we can all take with us a little more trust in the process, a little more trust in ourselves, and also just a little bit of knowing that there are those of us out there in the world. We're like moles, bringing this teaching out into the world, introducing these ideas to people that otherwise would have had no idea that this is out there, or that this works. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this. And I know we have an opportunity for discussion, and I don't remember if that's right now or in a couple minutes, but happy to do that too.
Okay, there. My mouse wasn't working. I was having a hard time reading. Yes, we're going to discuss now.
Cool.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
I want to be in marching band. I want to be.
Yeah.
It sounds like a fantastic learning process.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
Thanks,
Is.
Rev Dan. We are going to discuss before I stop the recording. Here at Center for Spiritual Living, we believe that one gives where one receives spiritual nourishment. So if you found value in the message, please, or feel moved to make a donation, please do so. Let me put the link in the chat, and I'll post it down below as well for future, for people who are watching the YouTube later. All right, there we go. I'm going to stop the discussion. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop the recording. If you want to be part of the discussion in future, please join us. The Zoom link is on our website, cslbouldervalley.org. We meet online via Zoom first, third, and fifth Sundays at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Hope to see you all there. All righty. Let me find the stop recording button. There it is.